Hi everyone, thanks for joining me today. I want to talk about a subject which has come to my attention, which is of considerable concern, and I'm assuming will be of concern to you. And it's with regard to a new terminology that's been, I don't know how new it is, but it's certainly come to my attention, and it is MAP. Now, MAP stands for Minor Attracted People. And the problem that I have with this is, firstly, it's about pedophilia, and secondly, it's about finding a way that these people are working to discover a way by which we can legitimise pedophilia. So the argument goes that there are a group of people who have this attraction towards young people, and particularly, well, they range from, there's a variety of ranges, so there's a degree of terminology that they're using to describe this. Pedophile, an individual attracted to a prepubescent child; a hebephile, an individual attracted to a pubescent child 11 to 14, and an ephebophile, an individual attracted to a post-pubescent child 15 to 19. And the issue for me is that there's a lot of discussion on the net at the moment about how these people are seeking to receive some sort of understanding. So they're equating it a bit with the LGBTQI plus people who are looking for legitimacy about their sexuality. And these pedophiles are saying, well, I have this problem, and the problem is that I have a desire for an attraction towards children in those particular age groups. However, they're saying that it is simply an attraction. It is something which hasn't expressed itself in terms of sexually assaulting or loading down pictures or participating in illegal activities which put children at risk. Now, I'm concerned that there are a number of people with that inclination who are simply coming out and saying, hello, here I am, and that what I am thinking is a massive difference between me acting upon this behaviour. The fact that it exists in the first place, the fact that there are people out there who genuinely believe that they have this attraction towards these children is in itself horrific. So they're saying, basically, I'm not going to act upon this, I'm simply going to be thinking about it, it will occupy my thoughts, that I have this need to think about children in this particular way. And when I think about the attraction, I think that attraction is, on the whole, a sexual attraction. So does that mean that they're getting some sort of joy out of, or sense of personal satisfaction from thinking about children in this way? Now, the difference is that they're saying that they're not acting upon this behaviour. But my fear is that as it receives a sense of legitimisation, that it becomes simply identified as a mental well-being problem, which certainly it is, no one's going to be disputing that. But as they become more and more overt in terms of their discussion around this, that behaviour in our society will become more and more acceptable. And as it becomes this acceptability, does that mean then that the behaviour that follows, the actual abuse of children, which will inevitably follow, will in turn become more and more acceptable? I think we need to be wary about where this is heading, and to raise our objection to this notion around MAPs, so that we can stem the flow in terms of this becoming part of the general conversation. To try and conflate this with being gay or whatever is I think an effort for that sense of legitimisation. Now, being gay or being cross-gender or being transvestite or whatever in itself is a personal choice that one makes about their own sense of identity. Now, people could argue, I guess, that these people making this about their own identity, but it isn't. There's a stark difference between how one defines oneself in terms of their own sexual orientation and how one defines themselves in terms of what they're thinking about others. The thought about others at some point inevitably will become an action. They will, regardless of what they say now, they will become a moment in which they will act. One of the arguments put forward was that as a person is more and more stigmatised around their pedophilic beliefs, that means they throw their hands up in the air and they say, bugger it, I'll just act upon it now, because it doesn't matter anymore. I'm so stigmatised, I'm so fraught with guilt and shame and a whole host of other stuff, I'll just bugger it, I'll just act. Now, the argument goes that if we destigmatise pedophilia, then these people will become more acceptable, that their beliefs will not throw them into this mass of confusion, and as a result they will be less likely to offend. The problem is that even if a person is stigmatised, does that necessarily allow them or give them permission to behave in ways which are going to damage others? Of course it doesn't. I've been watching an interesting show called The Patient on, I don't know whether it's on Netflix or whatever, but it's a story about a guy who is a serial killer. So he has these thoughts about, revengeful thoughts, I guess, about about simply killing people, and he has killed some people. And so he captures his therapist, and he locks him in this room, and he does some therapy with him, or supposedly, in order to help him to manage these terrible thoughts that he has about killing people. And even though through the series, he does actually kill somebody, but the point is that he's trying to work to overcome them. The interesting comparison to me is that in The Patient, the thoughts are so deep-rooted that it's almost therapeutically impossible to be able to reach him at a level that means that he's able to deal with those thoughts. And when I think about people who identify as pedophiles, it sits in the same category, that many of these people that are thinking these things about children are likely or less likely to be able to manage those thoughts, that they are continually intrusive, that those thoughts would have to interfere with any other relationship, respectful adult type relationship they wish to have. And how could you possibly have a relationship with someone who is occupied by thoughts around sexual contact or some sort of arousal as a result of thinking about what they can do to children? There's a interesting article by a partner, I'm assuming it's a female partner in this instance, of a male who is one of these MAPs, and she talks at length about her objection to the behaviour that is associated with pedophilia, but tries to develop an argument that says that we can separate the behaviour which this person, her partner, has not committed from the thoughts and the actions that they have. The reality is, and she disagrees, she argues against pedophilia. My problem with that is that if you have a partner who is honest about those thoughts that you have around children, would you ever allow that person to be around your own children given the types of thoughts that they're occupying? No, you wouldn't. If you're a sensible person, you just wouldn't do that. However, she tends in this article to justify her a range of diversity that she wants to accept in her life, and that this man has a diverse version. She doesn't agree with it, but she still chooses to have a relationship with him. I think there's something wrong with that to start with. Look, as a social worker, and just in my own life, I accept divergence. I accept everybody for whom they are. But there are a number of people that I've struggled to accept. I can't accept psychopaths, for example, and I'd struggle with people that are sociopaths. I struggle with those people that are extremely narcissistic, primarily because I know therapeutically it's really difficult to work with them and to shift those particular views because they're so ingrained. I've worked with men around domestic violence for over 30 years, and certainly there are a large group of the men that I've worked with are really difficult to shift their behaviour because they're so entrenched in misogyny that they just do not want to shift. It meets a need for them. And I see pedophilia clearly within that same bracket, that it's impossible to be able to see people shift from that. And there isn't much of a gap between what one occupies in one's thoughts, and particularly if those thoughts are continuous, irrational thoughts, and they become developed in such a way that they become powerful thoughts, then that person at some point is going to behave in a way which is offending. So I think we need to be careful of this surge, this movement now around these people with these particular beliefs, because there are people like this partner of this guy who are trying to justify the reasons why the thinking is acceptable. The thinking is not acceptable. That thinking is likely to lean towards offending. So don't have relationships. Don't make these people your friends. They are not your friends. If you have children, they are likely at some point to harm your children. So let's be aware of this problem around MAPS. Let's do what we can to argue against it, to where there are petitions. I believe there's a friend of mine, Michael Windsor, who has a petition up at the moment about MAPS. I'll put the link down below. Sign into that and do what we can to raise our voice against this new movement, which is about attempting to legitimise pedophilia.